And let's begin the Historic Preservation Committee meeting of April 25th, 2022. It's 4:30 p.m. This meeting is being held in pursuant to and in compliance with Ordinance number 20-A16, an ordinance to ensure the continuity of government during the COVID-19 disaster. Opportunities for public access to this meeting are posted on the county's website at the county calendar. The public has real-time audio-visual access to this meeting over Zoom and real-time audio access over telephone, both as provided in lawfully posted meeting notice. This meeting is being recorded and will be available on the county website. This online meeting is a public record and subject to disclosure under the Freedom of Information Act. We now have a quorum of 7 members, and Chris has sent out the minutes for review and approval. Are there any changes, remarks, or comments that anybody would like in regards to the minutes that Peter has posted for us?
I just have one small change to ask for.
Okay.
Number 4, discussion items. Number 1A, I guess, it says Nancy and Betsy discussed how an ordinance would work. That was Betsy.
Okay. Okay, well, Peter will make that note, please. Anybody else have any comments, changes, or additions? Then I'd like to propose that we vote for a approval of the minutes from March's meeting 2022. All in favor, I guess, just what are we doing, Margaret? Raising our hands?
So it sounds like, Ross, you just made a motion, so we need a second on the motion, and then we can take a vote. I think since almost everyone has their cameras up, I guess we'd need to hear from Diane when the vote is taken. Otherwise, everybody can raise their hands. So we need a second.
Second.
All right, we have a second from Nancy. Great. All in favor of approval, raise your hand. All opposed? Any opposed?
I'm not sure if I need to abstain because I wasn't at the meeting. You all can advise me.
You're not required to abstain.
Okay.
Approval.
Great. Minutes are hereby approved. Chris, do you want to take us through the updates?
I've got the first update. It's just quick. It's on the Union Run Baptist Church marker, just to let everyone know that the Department of Historic Resources had received their final approvals in mid-March from VDOT. The county received an invoice here earlier this month, and markers should be shipped to VDOT's signed contractor around Memorial Day. So if we get any more updates on that, we'll let you know.
Wonderful. Okay. Demolition and documentation. There were 3 properties on the monthly demolition report of April 2022. One of which was Oak Forest Circle. The second was Canterbury Road, and the third was Magnolia Ridge. It said in the demolition report that none of them were historic. I questioned the Magnolia Ridge property. That was a tenant house for Ingle Ridge Farm, the previous name, which again are those 3 Ingleside farms that are on, Jones's farms that are on Garth Road. Ingle Crest, Ingle Ridge, and Ingleside. Ingle Ridge is the first of the Jones properties across from Colthurst, which is a subdivision there on Garth Road. As you're leaving Barracks Road and you drop down that long stretch, that hill, Engle Ridge Farm is on the right. And it was owned by Mrs. Hafner, and then they split it. So anyway, the back portion is now called Magnolia Ridge. Chris, do you know anything more about that house? I know the house, it's in the very back. I documented the entire barn group, which was very historic and a really neat compound of barns and stables and equipment buildings and so forth, that they took all of that down. I documented that, I think, by myself. And there are 2 tenant houses that were on each side of that barn group. And this is the tenant house all the way in the very back. I did not see any pictures on the county website and the GIS. I believe it says it's 1960. I think it's older than that.
Let me share my screen. Are you all viewing my screen now?
Yeah, that's not the one. That's the one below.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
really,
it referenced the parcel is identified as the incorrect address, but that confirmed that it is in fact this one, which is closely more related to the 1960s date.
well,
Of
the
the
date,
property that's being demoed.
this is the one, because the house number they have is when I looked at the GIS map, is the house all the way in the back. This is the house to the west.
Okay.
I know this house very well. And we would definitely need to document that. And I hope it's not this house, but the one in the back is not as historic and as this one.
Okay.
But I absolutely, we need to document that. I think so.
Okay.
Because it's definitely not 1960, and it used to have a really neat slate patio with a brick knee wall all the way around in the front. That was kind of neat, and they obviously took that out. I saw the demo permit has already been granted to them though, so I don't know if it's too late. But that was Mrs. Hafner lived there, who was a relative of Mrs. Jones, who originally owned Ingleside, and it was a very prominent family in the horse industry, and they had everything from hunters, jumpers to steeplechase horses. The sister next door, as you head west, has the racetrack that's owned by the Mrs. Crutchfield now. They both have those wonderful old historic barns. And I had mentioned in the past, the other Jones farm, Ingleside, is one of the great barns that the roof is falling off. But anyway, I would be happy to, if you would, set up a viewing so we can document that house.
Sorry, I can follow up on that.
Okay, great. Because we did document all the barn group there, which was very extensive. I mean, the barn group was massive. And this was kind of part of that. So I think it's important because that supported the barn group that we've already documented. And it was all board and batten and metal roofs, and it was really quite nice back there. Okay. Anybody else have any comments on the demolition report?
Would add there's one more. It's showing as let's see, incomplete currently, but it is Pounding Creek Farm. The address was related to Pounding Creek Farm. If the committee remembers that address, that was
That's the house right there on Dry Bridge Road.
Right, yeah.
Ed, that's the house you went by to look at.
Yeah, the most recent aerial shows the trees have been cleared out and the demo permit's been applied for, but there's something holding up. So right now, currently it's incomplete. So when
Okay.
that does get, when the information does get received and kind of
That's a
internally,
significant house.
Yeah.
Ed, when you went by there last, it was, you couldn't get to it because of all the brush, and now the brush is gone.
Ed sent over the photos. It seems like it's been pretty well documented. Only photos I could probably note, there were probably exterior photos now that trees have been cleared out that we would want to capture for demolition.
Do you have a diagram on the GIS of that house?
I believe I saw one. I'll double check right now.
I'm sure there is. I hadn't checked, but a lot of people, as soon as they cleared all the overgrown shrubbery around the house, it exposed a really neat retaining wall in the front. And a lot of people have been kind of calling in on that specific house. That property is leased by Ragged Branch Distillery, and they have all that property and corn for the distillery and for their beef cattle operation. The Stevensons own that property, the two children and their mother. But I don't know much about that house other than being able to see it from Dry Bridge Road. No, Dickwoods Road, I'm sorry.
Sorry, yeah.
Dickwoods Road. So let's keep an eye on that, and if it needs to be documented, it should be documented as well.
Isn't that the one that I did some documentation on?
Yes,
It is.
yeah, you met there with,
I wanted to go back to do more, but you guys told me I shouldn't do that, remember?
well, we didn't have permission, really.
Yeah, well, anyway, I would be happy to go back there again. I wanted
Yeah.
to do that, but I was told I shouldn't.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think if, I guess, Chris, they haven't done a demo report, a demo application yet, have they?
The application's been submitted. It's in an incomplete status. I'm not sure exactly what information's missing, but there's some information that's missing to make a complete demo permit application. So it's pending whatever that missing information is.
Well, now, Ed, now is the time for us to document it now that we have, we'll hopefully have permission from the owners.
Yeah, it should be able to get better exterior photos as well now that the trees have been cleared out.
Yeah, yeah, good.
Someone sent me actually pictures of it that has gone by, and were the people who told me about it originally. And apparently they went by and they sent me some more pictures of the exterior of the house.
There's also some agricultural buildings behind it. From what I can tell from the road, there wasn't anything of substance from those buildings other than mainly equipment storage buildings and sheds of sorts. So let's Chris, let's keep Magnolia Ridge and that Dick Woods property on Pounding Branch or Pounding Creek on our radar, please.
Okay.
Margaret, do you want to walk us through the discussion items, or?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
So we're a little behind schedule, so let's just keep our eye on the clock. Today, for today's conversation about the comp plan, we're going to divide it up into two parts. The first part, our plan is to stick with the plan we've been following, to ask everybody a question or two and just get a conversation going so we can get some of your ideas. And then we'll jump into another idea for discussion after that. So today's questions, we actually have two for today. or we want to talk about opportunities and threats. So what opportunities exist for achieving our historic preservation goals, objectives, and strategies? And are there new or current or ongoing threats to the county's historic resources that should be mentioned?
I think there's always a threat. I would like to see the Historic Preservation Committee more involved in some of these submittals that we're leaned upon a little bit more on our opinion of, for instance, Dunlora or Belvedere. I think we should be called upon for our advice and consulting of these structures and be part of the mix. Instead of just documenting stuff afterwards, I think we should be brought in to give our advice, just like the Planning Commission does for the Board of Supervisors. I think we should be that resource to provide data and information regarding these properties.
Ross, I think that's a really great point. Our role is to advise, but how are we given a platform to do that? And even if only on things like rezonings and special use permits and things that go up to Planning Commission and board, let alone administrative policies and how that happens on a staff level. I think that's a great suggestion.
Yeah, I just think
or comment.
we should be one of the boxes that they should need to check as they go through their approval process, and we should chime in on our input.
If I may introduce the possibility of an ordinance again, that would help to deal with a lot of the threats. It would also provide opportunity, and that we would be able to qualify for certain funds toward getting surveys and nominations and this sort of thing. I feel as though I'm kind of, beating the same drum over and over again, but I firmly believe that if we could get an ordinance in place, that would go a long way toward achieving our goals.
Betsy, I don't disagree with you, and I thank you for always putting that to the attention of the committee. I think one of our stumbling blocks in that is that we want to go from nothing to everything without perhaps building in the steps the steps along the way, right? So an ordinance, okay, so what would an ordinance require? It would require a, design guidelines review committee. So it's like, it's the means to the end, but I don't know that we have honestly, the support within the county itself, within county leadership to support that at this time. So how do we educate not only the public, but also our own leadership about the benefits of an ordinance, not just for protecting historic resources, but what other benefits? And I think we could do a better job at, if the ordinance is the end goal, what are the steps to get there? How do we make those links between the benefits of historic preservation and economic development, the benefits of historic preservation and sustainability? And I think now's the time really in our talk around the comprehensive plan rewrite to start connecting those dots so that so it ultimately leads people to what I hear your goal being, which would be an ordinance. So big education, outreach, advocacy, kind of like building up the toolkit to get to the ordinance.
Well, Liz, I agree with you. But I think
challenge and opportunity.
I think it's something we should start working toward.
Anyone else?
Oh, I'd have one other thought. I just checked my notes. I was mentioning making the links between, and this I see as an opportunity, right? This is something we could use in our favor. as we are working on the comp plan, or advising on the comp plan, making those links between different chapters. And another one is affordable housing and the role that historic preservation, not in preservation in terms of sometimes how we tend to think of preserving Albemarle's prestigious historic structures, but also just the role that vernacular and older housing stock plays as naturally affordable housing, and not just vernacular, but just older housing stock, more modest, turn of the century, 1920s, 30s, 40s. These houses are out there serving a role in our community in terms of affordable housing.
Absolutely.
Interesting point.
Well, and that's how, right? Like, this is how we start to get people thinking, maybe not everyone appreciates historic preservation in the way that this committee does, but how else can we grab people's interests and say, well, do you care about the stories of people in the community, and make the connection between historic preservation and oral history, or stories of, like our local marker program, about stories of unknown or not as
lesser known.
Lesser known stories. Thank you, Margaret. So I think we should just be thinking about, instead of just sort of pounding the drum for an ordinance, what other ways can we influence change and advocate for the value and the role of historic preservation in Albemarle. One other thing is, I think that we all know this, we are challenged as a committee because we are a volunteer group. We're limited in what we can do and how we can meet, and therefore the work that we can generate as a committee is somewhat limited. And so I think this is really kind of like, this is not an exciting talking point, but having more dedicated staffing time in CDD towards historic preservation goals.
I think that the point you made about difficulties in meeting and having the ability of committee members to get stuff done, I think that's really important. Thanks for mentioning that.
Yeah, we talk about a lot of things. We talk about website. We talk about local markers. We talk about, I'm at a conference right now, and here's a brochure for the County of Chesapeake African American Heritage Trail. A nice little driving brochure that they have produced. Wouldn't it be great if we could generate something like this? But how would we actually do it? We as a committee, it'd be impossible, frankly. And that's a shame that we could be doing more.
Dee?
They have a very strong working group out there in Chesapeake. So, I don't really know how this committee aims to engage with a working group, or which working group, and you might want to think about things like that. This is almost my next to the last meeting with you guys, and I've been thinking about that a whole lot because of the way our marker program had become very frustrated around limited contact with one another. And not only with one another, with the community. It was more top down, which I understand. It's still a great idea. But working groups and working group engagement and dealing with networks, neighborhoods, and our committees within those working groups is a big step from what I understand in moving the comprehensive plan, the county's comprehensive plans forward. So I don't really know. That's that's a big deal to me, working with the community. And I don't know, I wonder about that, how this committee plans to put those steps into place, and if that's possible with the way the infrastructure is set up here.
Margaret, do you think it'd be possible for Historic Preservation Committee to piggyback on community engagement that's going to be happening and outreach with comp plan? And if so, second part, Diane, hopefully, and we will miss you very much on this committee, but hopefully we could then work with you as a citizen and engaged community member, and still be working on this thing that is, yes, local marker, telling histories. Great. Margaret, back to you.
Yeah, I don't know exactly, and I think the group, the primary group that's leading the comp plan update, I'm not sure that they have figured out all the details of community engagement when we get to that phase, but my guess is they would be happy to have help. So just make sure they're aware that we've got community
Happy to help.
available. Yep, very good.
Well, and in a way, sorry, and this is a little bit tangential, but I'll end it here and pull it all together. I think that would be great. And what I'm hearing is this is similar to when Siri approached our group and said, I really need help with this thing. Would the Historic Preservation Committee like to take on this local marker project? And we said, yes, let's hitch our wagon to that star. We see something we can tangibly do. There's a budget. There's a process, or at least we sort of made a process a little bit. But we took it about as far as we could, I think, frankly. And now we have this new opportunity with the comprehensive plan to insert ourselves in more of the formulation of comp plan stuff, goals, priorities. What is it? What is historic preservation to Albemarle County? Not just what is it to this committee. We could talk about that all day, but if we actually want to be changing the direction or changing the needle or whatever, turning the direction of the needle, we have to step up and see this as an opportunity, I guess maybe a call to action for other committee members to. And I guess I'm saying too, to staff and to Supervisor Lepisto, we're here and we want to be engaged, and we just don't exactly know how.
Nancy, were you going to add something?
I think so. Yes. I think the opportunity is the fact that we have a county that's very rich in its natural and historic resources, and the beauty of it is apparent. Not every place in the county, but the areas of it. And so, and then in the end, I think everyone here who lives here agrees that it's important, that it's very beautiful and it's important, and something that makes it very special about living in Albemarle County. So I think we're sort of, if we can just kind of raise that, just sort of make that just a little bit more apparent in everyone's mind, I think there could be, I think there's a big collective body here that would care, that would go a long way to supporting it in a way that they can't now because they don't know exactly how to do it. I don't know what that means, but I guess I'm saying, I think that if you really were to just dig a little bit into it, there is a caring group, a body in this area that really wants to support the preservation of the history of this place. I think we have a website that we can, begin to work with. It's certainly such an important thing that we need to be. I mean, it is our point of contact, and I think it's an opportunity that right now it's not going far enough.
B, you've had your hand up for quite a while.
Yes, thank you very much. I have really appreciated hearing everything. And I sometimes, unfortunately, have to be, I'll call it a reality check. Although I will say everybody's passion about historic preservation is spot on. How we go about doing that is another matter. Now, I'm just going to address a few of the comments. Regarding I know Betsy keeps bringing up the ordinance. That's something where I'd have to see, you all would have to develop. We'd have to see what that is what it means, what it entails. Okay, so I at this point, I have no idea what kind of ordinance we want. Regarding what Liz has said, that people want historic preservation. Absolutely. In this area, we have a lot of people who really want historic preservation. But what we're saying is let's use the county to do it. I'm not sure that's the proper venue. From what I'm seeing, we are up, I'm not gonna lie, we're up to our neck in all kinds of different things, as the people who are on this, on the staff know. We're doing a lot of things at the county level. We're just really, there's a lot going on. I think, in my opinion, if we form something like a historic preservation foundation, where we started collecting private donations from the many people who believe in historic preservation, that's where we can actually do what we want. We don't have to go and ask Mother May I. We don't run up against the Dillon rule. We don't run up against, frankly, bureaucracy. If we start a foundation, which we can do, I'll ask Margaret. Margaret, can we do that? I think we can do that. Start a historic preservation foundation nonprofit where we collect monies, and then we can do what we want. There are many homes here. I'm dealing right now with a number of very large parcels with older homes back to the 1700s, that some of the people there who own that want to use it as homestays. We've just enlarged our, we're looking at our homestays that will include larger than 5 acres, so that some of these larger parcels with larger historic homes and smaller outbuildings can also use those as homestays. What that does is it brings different price levels. It brings people into an awareness of being able to stay in some historic places, kind of like a Williamsburg. It wouldn't be official. It would be more rural and country, but it wouldn't be a Williamsburg type setting. I know there's private funding being raised for St. John, the Rosenwald School. Have you all heard of the Rosenwald School on St. John? We're raising money for that. That's extremely important, but that's all being done privately. Well, and actually county, I think we gave some money. We gave some money to that too. But there are things that we can do. I know you all want a staff person or half-time FTE. Not sure that's going to work. We need to find a way what we want to do without, frankly, relying on the county. And not that we can't rely somewhat on the county. I mean, Margaret's here, Carolyn's here, Chris is here. But that's just a reality check, frankly. I know I asked before, I said, some of these historic homes, I said, can we visit those historic homes? Well, no, you can't visit them. Well, if you can't visit them, it's hard to justify using taxpayers' dollars to help preserve those homes, frankly. Maybe that's where the Historic Preservation Foundation would come in. I mean, think about it. We're using taxpayers' dollars to restore a home, but no one can visit it. It's a private home. That's the other thing. We run into a lot of private homes. So that's something we have to be aware of. And as a Dillon rural state, we have to be aware of what we can do, what we cannot do regarding private property also. So with that, I'll just be quiet for a while. Thank you.
I see that Liz has her hands up. Some of those comments are a great segue into our next question, but let's get Liz's comment and then maybe move on.
Thanks. Well, I mean, I actually don't even know where to start. Like, that is one of the most discouraging things I think anyone on this committee could hear from a supervisor who is appointed to this committee to advocate for us, is my opinion. Actually, not to I don't know, tell us that we don't even have a place within this county. I think that rather than relegate historic preservation to something that maybe should only be done through private donations, that's horrifying. Historic preservation is a chapter in the county's comprehensive plan because ostensibly the county values it just as it values economic development, environment, and using environment as an example, it'd be like saying we should just let private citizens take care of the environment because that should just be handled through the private entities. The role of the county is to protect things for the greater good, and I think that we see historic resources, not just private homes, but all of landscape and natural beauties and vistas and view sheds and entrance corridors, all of these things that, yes, need to be protected. And it's just so disheartening to think that, I don't think that everyone on the board of supervisors thinks that the historic preservation, it should just be relegated in on this to this corner. But I don't know how we move forward as a committee with that kind of rhetoric, frankly, and it's really upsetting. And that's all I have to say about that.
Okay, well, first of all, I mean, I'm the board liaison to this committee, but we have been discussing this at a number of other meetings since I came on. I'm trying to figure out a way of how to do it. Yes, I can go back and say, you know what, they want a full-time person here. Okay, that doesn't get passed. Where does that get us? If you don't want me to be realistic, that's not a problem. You tell me what you would like to see me advance, and then we'll see what happens. That's not a problem. But I'm more of a pragmatist, and I would like to see us get things done that we want to get done. And I want to find a way to do that in spite of, this is an important committee. This is not the top priority because of everything that's going on. However, it is an important committee. I want to find a way to do what we want to do. I will introduce an ordinance. You give me an ordinance, I'll introduce an ordinance.
So I do think this is still a really good segue into our next question. So, or next discussion point. So as B just mentioned, we've talked about the possibility of an ordinance multiple times now. And at a previous meeting or somewhere along the way, I emailed everyone that spreadsheet of the research that one of the previous historic preservation committees put together on a number of the Virginia counties that had ordinances in place. And I think if the committee wants to continue discussing the possibility of the county having an ordinance, that it would be useful for committee members to go back to that spreadsheet, the work that was done for that, and update it, because it's been several years since that was done, and some of those ordinances may have changed. But I do think it's important, as Liz was saying, to, I think the committee, I would like to see the committee think more broadly, but without reinventing the wheel. So I think that it might make sense for the committee to do some other research, possibly starting with those same counties that have ordinances in place, but to do research into their comp plans and historic preservation plans if they have one, and to see what are the projects and the programs that those places are using. What are they doing in addition to the ordinance to protect their resources? And maybe these are ideas that we can steal, things that we can use. And then I think there's a few additional counties that are not showing up in DHR's CLG list. So these would be counties that presumably don't have ordinances, but would very likely have historic preservation plans, or at least historic preservation sections in their comp plan. and we could research those as well. And I've got a bunch of those counties listed here. What I think would be great is if you would all just say, yes, Margaret, please assign me one or more counties to do this research, and then I will send that out to you all, give you your assignments, and maybe with some a few leading questions that you'd want to answer. And then beginning next month, we could all get back together and have a few people each month report out on what they've found, and our discussions then about comp plan and HP plan update would follow through from those findings.
Send me a county,
Okay.
or send me 2 counties. How's that?
I think that's a great idea, Margaret. Let's divvy out, see how many counties we have, and I'd certainly like to take on a couple of them.
Okay, great.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Margaret. And I like the idea of looking at those stepping stones toolkit, like whatever you want to call it, the menu of things that these counties may be doing that, you know, and are they successful? How much work, how much infrastructure and administration, you know, and staff time, how, like, you know, speaking to the pragmatism, like what does it take to do this thing that they do?
What is that
Can we
old,
send you a county, Liz?
what is that
Oh,
old
yeah, of
proverb?
course.
So
That-
we got 3, Ross, me, and Liz so far. Nancy? Nancy, that's 4.
I'll take one, Margaret.
Great.
What is that old saying that the best compliment is someone copying something, you know?
Oh, definitely.
That's really a wonderful way to learn. So I think if we all get together and study other folks, that we can rejuvenate our ideas and come up with some better ways to find ways to support the county's historic presence.
There's also imitate, don't innovate.
Yeah, there you go. That's another one.
Are you
No
familiar?
need to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
Are you familiar with ChesapeakeHeartland.org? I would highly recommend that you look at and we're talking about Chesapeake, Virginia, and that community. They have a real powerful archival website, and I think you can't get around community engagement if you're talking about doing what they did. ChesapeakeHeartland.org, very impressive.
And I know that you don't have much more time on the committee. I participate in this upcoming research.
I'm sorry, Margaret, that was sort of garbled. Can you say that again?
It's a question for Diane.
Excuse me?
Question for you, Diane. I know you've mentioned a couple times that you don't have much time left on your term with the committee.
Mhm.
Does that mean that you do not want to participate in this new research effort?
I don't mind participating in that. I mean, I don't know how much I'm allowed. I don't, you can kind of give me some guidance on that. I don't mind participating at all. That's part of what I do outside of the committee is engage with other communities.
Thank you. Pete, I see your hand is up.
A clarification on the notes, please. So we do have an action item. I've got Liz, Betsy, Nancy, and Diane. And just trying to frame it up for a consistent work product. This is what I have, that as we go out and engage with counties that have passed ordinances, we would be asking questions that include what types of ordinances have passed, which are perceived to be successful. If we do lions, tigers, and bears, oh my, which are the tigers that are successful, and then steps and timeframes involved to pass an ordinance. Is that what we've agreed that the action items will be for our committee members?
I think it was greater than ordinance as well. Ordinance and comp plan and historic preservation plan kind of research. So not just the focus on ordinance only, but kind of what other localities have done historic preservation wise, kind of in the grander scheme of things.
Just
At DHR, there should be a preservation planner. Maybe that person could assist with this. At least I'm sure that a lot of DHR staff has helped structure some of these preservation ordinances. So there must be a person or maybe two people at DHR that could be helpful with this as well.
Possibly, I'm not sure. I might be more efficient just for individuals to go into the the county's websites and pull up the ordinance and do that research. Pete, just to clarify, there's sort of two tasks that we're talking about. One is to update the ordinance research that was done by a previous historic preservation committee, just to see if that confirm that work is still accurate, and if not, update whatever has changed. The second part would be to research what projects and programs are showing up in the other counties' comprehensive plans and historic preservation. And I think Liz's comment is one that you were referring to. She mentioned sort of circling back to the ordinance, how are those being accomplished? What's the infrastructure? What is the staffing? Those sort of nitty gritty things. So those are probably not going to be, that information is probably not going to be easily available from a quick look at the ordinance itself. So that may be finding the planning division of that county and giving a call and trying to track somebody down for those answers. I'll try and put a list of questions together to email out to everyone.
Thank you.
It's the research.
I think just a general over study of other counties and what they're doing and how are they being innovative and what new programs and projects they have going on that we can incorporate with our county. So just kind of an investigative research. Each person will be designated a couple of counties, and we'll dig into there, and then we'll see what we find, and we can dig even more once we find some good avenues to follow. And then we can share what we've learned together in the following meeting.
Exactly. Pete, did that help, or did I confuse you even more?
No, it helps a lot. Just and now a separate comment. I personally don't know how to engage the journey or the sphere of influence for ordinance. So I was keenly interested in that. I know that we discussed it last month. I think, Margaret, that was the takeaway that you had in terms of sourcing the prior research that had been done. But I don't know what a successful versus a non-successful journey looks like. I wonder is that a guest speaker topic? If we were able to identify somebody that has gone on that journey and say that, we were able to do this in 9 months as opposed to 9 years.
Sure. Yeah, if anybody, in your research, if you're talking to people in these other counties and they've got stories about what worked and what didn't work, yeah, I guess speakers would be great.
Yeah.
Are we talking about something that's will be due by next meeting?
I think that
I think more than one, it sounds like her assigning more than one county to one person might be a little bit too much for next meeting. Maybe a county per person and then circle back to another county for the next meeting potentially. Depending on how far in depth the person gets on the county research, it might extend past. This is everybody, those people kind of have other tasks and duties to do other than this research.
It may be that next month's meeting is everyone talking about the problems that they're having trying to put the information together, and we might need to spend that time sort of ironing out some of the wrinkles and setting on our process for gathering information a little more.
So you're talking about each committee member having one county and going on that county's website regarding historic preservation, what they do, how they do it, how they've gotten there, how they pay for it, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
Good, good.
And what I suggested, that was a community-based website, so it was not a municipality. So
Yes.
that, yeah, totally
Sounds
different.
like a good plan.
Okay, Pete, are you interested in being assigned a county or two?
I'm happy to be assigned a county or two.
Great, thank you. Okay, we have a few members who are not attending today. I will contact them individually and do my best to get them on board as well. So look for an email from me in the next day or two with a summary of what we just discussed and assignments. And if you have questions along the way, just give me a call or shoot me an email. Thank you all for being interested in doing this. I really look forward to this research. I think that that it will reveal some good ideas and maybe help us just start thinking in other directions. Okay, I think that's all I've got, unless anybody else has any comments on that topic.
Not on that topic.
Okay. Great, then I think Ross, it's back to you.
Okay, what, one question I have, I got a call from Jenny Moore that she's resigning from the Planning Commission, and she's our liaison for the Planning Commission. We need to get a new liaison from the Planning Commission, don't we? And what is that process? They vote someone onto our committee? Yes. Okay. So I guess we need to fill that seat.
Well, I will ask our planning director tomorrow. I'll let our planning director know tomorrow that that opening is there and see.
And for anybody that sees Jenny, she's having difficulty with her back. And it's caused her great grief and slowed her down quite a bit. So she had evidently stepped down.
Margaret, I just sent something also when you said the planning director and the clerk's office so that they can put it on the calendar. It won't, I don't think it'll be enough time for the May 4th meeting. We usually do the assignments the first Wednesday of the month. So it might not be enough time because they would want to open it up to see who would want to be or ask it. May be able to do that because it would be a planning commissioner. So
Let's start the process.
yeah, absolutely.
do.
Yeah, check with the clerk's office and maybe something that we can easily do.
Okay. Thanks, Ross.
Okay, so any other business, any new owners of historic properties, threatened properties to watch, or recent demolished structures, or anything on anybody's radar? Nancy and I had a good discussion. Do we have time?
We do.
Do you want to give a quick summary of our discussion that we had?
You're muted.
Muted.
Oh, I'm muted.
No.
No, Nancy.
We went into we had a meeting with Kate Kaminsky, who's the executive director of the Albemarle County Police Foundation. And I'll admit to you, I went into the meeting pretty skeptical about it and, what would be the outcome of it. But, it was actually pretty interesting. So the Albemarle County Police Foundation was founded almost 30 years ago. And its mission is to, as they say, is to promote public safety by supporting the Albemarle County Police Department. And it's made up of a staff, a board. It's a president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, and executive director, and then a volunteer board. And basically they go about fundraising to support various initiatives that include everything from an annual awards ceremony, banquet, to officer support, house buying assistance, rental assistance, supplemental training, equipment, scholarships for continuing education. And then they have a number of other programs that have to do with making possible opportunities for community engagement and relations, and supplemental gifts to support the police, such as their canine unit that requires the cost of law enforcement dogs, as they call them. So I don't know exactly. They have an endowment that they work off of, and they're raising money every year. Each time they set down what their operating budget is. And I think, it raised a lot of, questions about what it could mean for this committee. What would it mean if we were to have money? What would we want to do with it? What would we imagine funding? And then I think it also, part of the conversation had to do with how our committee could partner with other agencies, like-minded agencies such as Preservation Piedmont and the Albemarle Historic Society, to work with a shared foundation that would raise money for all the groups. So I haven't had a chance to connect in with anybody in the other agencies or committees, but I'd be happy to do that and see what, because I think that we don't want to be competing. Hopefully there's and find out more about that.
Right.
So Ross, I'm sorry, those were kind of my notes. Please add.
Yeah, no, it was an interesting meeting that kind of, and thanks to B's suggestion, kind of opened up another avenue of how we could expand, but yet be careful and not take away from the other groups. It's kind of like our group is, we need to focus on how we can improve what we do and always set lofty goals and strive for these goals. But yet, the foundation is where it would fit in. I look closely at, Preservation Piedmont and the Albemarle County Historical Society. And it's got to be something that fits in well with everybody to work together and not make one weaker. And, so it was a good meeting, and it really opened our eyes to the potential of some other avenues we could follow. So I did look at a lot of, the Preservation Piedmont and the Historical Society. Kind of looked at, Preservation Piedmont is more, they have a tremendous advocacy committee and very much a voice in the local public processes of things. They have a similar group as our demolition is. They have the neighborhood, they work with the Neighborhood Development Services Department of Charlottesville, which I think Ed and Jared kind of started, I believe. And then looked at what the Albemarle County Historical Society does. And I don't know, I guess we just all have to figure out where our places are and how we can collaborate in an effective way.
That makes sense.
But anyway, it was interesting to talk with her to see how the foundation, it really just has an executive director. And they're very smart with their board because they're very selective of finding a board member with the task or the gift or the that they need within the board. So in selecting their board, they needed one of this, one of that, and they were very strategic in their board allocation. But anyway, we can talk more about that another time.
Well, I guess I'd like to ask, what is the next step? Maybe maybe this group could give some direction as to what, how we should proceed. I don't want to just leave it open-ended. Let's try and do, even if it's just a conversation with someone at Preservation Piedmont, should we try and get a gathering together of these three groups?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would kind of be like a miniature pop-up, just, I don't know.
I mean, I guess realizing these other groups, the Preservation Society, Piedmont Preservation, and the Albemarle Historic Society, they are already raising their own money through their organizations.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's kind of, a foundation would be competing with the fundraising of these other organizations.
You might want to also include, even though it's a small group, is the Scottsdale Museum, because they are, it's a great organization, very small group, but at least we should include the Scottsdale Museum group in all our discussions, I think. Are you familiar with that, Nancy?
I am.
Okay, all right.
Nancy, I'm sorry. I was just going to say that the Preservation Piedmont, I'm on the board, and Ross is on the board of advisors. I'm on the board of directors. And yes, we and Ed Lay. I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. And I have my camera off because my phone is going to die pretty soon, and I apologize. But yes, we have a grants program. We have an awards program. We're doing a lot of the things that I hear the foundation, these things that a foundation would do. It's a 501c3. So, to your point about duplicating effort, that I don't see the advantage, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of my concerns, is that, one other group would dilute the other two. But I don't know, Nancy, what would you suggest we look into this, how we can move something forward on this topic?
I have two questions, but I see that Pete has his hand up.
Oh,
Yeah, thank you. I'm just trying to rationalize the conversation with our research on ordinance and other historic preservation plans. Part of that conversation was the time of this group, and this journey sounds like it's also a very long one that involves a lot of activities, including those that I'm definitely not a subject matter expert on, like fundraising. And I wonder if that research should be presented together so we can make choices. I don't understand really what the journey of either would be like, and maybe the pros and cons, but is that a choice? And I'm not trying to present a false choice. It may not be a polarity. We may not have to choose between them, but should we have that discussion together on, because often when we talk about ordinance and foundation has been kind of coupled in the conversation.
an ordinance, I mean, the foundation was suggested in lieu of the ability to have the ordinance. So I guess it's just an avenue we're looking at.
No, I think a foundation was suggested in a way of eschewing any government role in historic preservation, frankly. So
Yeah.
if we're all on this committee because we care about historic preservation as an arm of our county government, and that's why we serve, we're appointed to that by the board. Similarly, I serve on Preservation Piedmont because I am part of that nonprofit. I see them in two different ways, serving two different functions to our community as a whole.
Yeah, and point of clarification, Liz, that's not true. That is not true at all. I hate for you to sit there and say something that is not accurate. It was a way of getting done what we want to get done on this committee. But if the committee is planning on getting the county to bankroll everything, that's where I'm just we can try, we can certainly put in for things. I know this committee said they wanted a full-time FTE or half-time FTE. We can certainly put that in, but if it doesn't get us anywhere, where does that leave us? Bottom line is we've got to move forward. We've got to keep going, and we've got to have alternate plans to be able to do what we want to do.
When the idea of a foundation was first mentioned, I guess the thought in my head was that the committee would, at this point in time, do a little bit of research to see if it was something that might be feasible and might be one of the recommendations that gets included in the updated historic preservation plan, but do enough research to figure out if it was, if it was going to be feasible at all. I think also it might be that if there was a foundation, that if there was some private funding, it might be that there are particular programs, a subset of programs that the committee is interested in, or a subset of historic preservation programs that the county is interested in getting done, that would be that would fall to the foundation. Like if Preservation Piedmont and the Historical Society aren't funding markers, well, maybe there's a foundation that funds the markers every year. Maybe it's something like that. I have no idea. I'm just throwing out thoughts off the top of my head, but it may be, as we work through all our discussions with these updates, that there are certain things that that you might need county regulations to deal with, and other things, other projects that a foundation might be more suited to accomplishing without stepping on the toes of other organizations.
Thank you for that reminder, Margaret. That matches my memory as well. And maybe the impression I got from the research from Nancy and Ross is that if the journey is funding, and that doesn't seem like a problem that we could solve, that if it doesn't start with a pool of money looking for a home that is matched with our mission, the broad set of things that the Police Foundation is doing, that would be quite a challenge for us, given some of the discussions that we noted earlier about time and availability.
Right. On the other hand, the variety of things that you mentioned that the Police Foundation is doing is it's very interesting, and maybe there's some more ideas there. I don't know much about fundraising and creating a foundation, so but that might be something else for us doing a little more research into what that really, just to get us all a little more informed.
If I think about funding projects, in this conversation, either exclusively through the community or through private fundraising, B, do you see that we could be more successful, let's say, in getting a staffing position if we were to say we do some match funding, that we could do 50%, I don't know, throw out a number, 50%. That would support a position, and with the county then, more open to saying, okay, that's a working deal here with the, and we can supply the other 50%. You're muted.
Even for you do a quarter, they do a quarter for halftime FTE, something like that. Maybe looking into some students at UVA and some interns and getting them to do some work for us and being able to pay for them, and we do a match with the county. Anything where we're putting forth the effort too. We're not just holding out our hands saying, hey, pay, give us money, do this, because of, like I said, the litany of things that we already have going. That would be much more, yes, enticing. And to make our goals clear and more in specific, frankly, what we want to do. Like I said, I brought that up about the private houses. Do we want to use public monies to preserve a home that is a private home? you know, that's a hard sell, frankly, if no one's going to, like I said, it's no one's.
It's actually not a tough sell if you think about our historic resources in the United States being a shared resource that once lost is lost forever. So in that way, yes, it's part of the public good to ensure that, you know, we don't lose our history. It's our collective history.
Yeah, I understand that, but we get emails every single day. People are complaining about a 5-cent tax on single-use plastic bags. They're complaining about raising the transit occupancy tax. They're complaining about the meals tax.
Sure, and I'm not a county
anything,
supervisor, but people
Right.
come into this community and spend their money and go to wineries and breweries and stay in Airbnbs and like to drive through scenic, you know, roads because of historic resources. So it is sort of a part and parcel deal.
But that's what I'm saying. If you can't see that historic resource that we use public monies to pay for, and you can't see it.
I mean, you can see a lot of them. I feel like this this is a really weird thing to be like harking on, and because there are many publicly viewable houses, properties,
Well, I know that. I know that.
local markers. Like, let's just talk about local markers. You know, should the county pay for local markers? I think there's a case for that.
I like the local markers, and I've brought up before in other meetings that the local markers, where they're placed, nobody can read them. So our local markers are a great idea. Yes, they're.
Yeah, and so I guess I'm just saying, like, let's not. Should the county go to a program in which it funds historic restorations? I don't necessarily think so, but you know, that because that's 0 to 1 million. But a local marker program, great way to increase advocacy and awareness and historic preservation education.
Yes, if they're properly placed, which is something that we need to do. And maybe retake the ones we have and put them in a location where people can actually stop and read them.
Well, I think those are state markers, but I understand where you're going.
You know, you might want to check with Preservation North Carolina. That's a foundation that has a revolving fund, and they do what you've described that you don't want county money going for. They simply allocate money for the preservation of historic homes, and then when that home sells, they purchase the home, restore it, and when it sells, then they take the money and they roll it back into another historic home, another historic rehab. This has been going on for, gosh, 9 to 35 years, very successfully. So the organization is called Preservation North Carolina. You might want to check into that.
That's actually a good idea, Betsy, and it's something we're thinking of doing for our older homes in the urban ring that don't have, the people have lived there forever. They don't have the money to hook up to sewer. So we're thinking of having a program where we pay to hook up to sewer because it's more environmentally beneficial. And then when that home sells, basically we have a lien against our house. When that home sells, we get the money back. So it goes back into that fund, and we can continue doing that for older homes where people cannot afford to hook up to the sewer system. So basically you're talking about the same thing, but you would be talking about some seed money to be able to start that. And maybe that's where the foundation, if we do a foundation, maybe that's could be part of it also. And by the way, Ross, I don't think it's competing to have a foundation, because I think for the historic preservation of different buildings, homes, to me, that's very specific. And I think that's almost a different clientele. And I'm not sure that would necessarily compete with some of the others, maybe a little bit, but I think you'd have a lot of people that are really interested in history and would donate to be able to save some homes.
Good.
Well, it's worked in North Carolina, but keep in mind, this is a statewide organization.
What is
It's
that?
not specific to a county. It's
What-
statewide.
What, the North Carolina one?
Yeah, it's called Preservation North Carolina. It's
Okay.
statewide. It's a
All right.
revolving fund. They
Okay,
purchase a house, they
Right.
restore it, they sell it,
right.
and then they roll the profits right back into the organization to purchase the next house and do the same thing too.
Well, that would be great if the state would do something like that.
Well, in this case, it's a private foundation, but it operates at the state level.
Okay, which is a different ballgame.
Yeah, it is. It's not county specific, it's specific to the state, but it is a private foundation.
Just as a reminder, because I know that you've all studied the current historic preservation plan and you've memorized every recommendation that's in there. There is one that talks about the county having a, or getting a revolving
Revolving fund.
program. But we need the state enabling legislation to allow us to do it.
And I would love for that to happen. Maybe that's something that the other supervisors, maybe that's something we'd agree for a legislative agenda for next year. But probably with the legislators who's in control now, hey, don't shoot the messenger, but I doubt that that's going to happen, frankly.
So, and this is another great segue into one other thing that I wanted to mention as we're getting close to the end of our meeting time for today's meeting. Ross and I met with Jared Lowenstein maybe a week or two ago, also with another previous chairperson of the Historic Preservation Committee, Sarah Lee Barnes, and we all had a wonderful talk with Jared and presented him with a small gift of appreciation for all the time that he has contributed to the committee. But one of the things that we discussed, and Sarah Lee reminded me that back when she was on the committee, and this was now several years ago, many years ago, they did try to get that enabling legislation in place, and it was it did not work out, and the bankers were just totally against it. So what would happen with another try, but just throwing that out there as a little bit of history for you. And Jared says to tell everyone hello. And he misses everybody. He misses being at the committee meetings. And so maybe someday we'll see him back again.
Question. We had discussed the demolition report. I've captured that it's a potential opportunity in terms of advisory capacity. I did not capture whether there's any research. Would it require an ordinance that the committee could act as an advisory capacity for the demolition report, or is that simply an administration function of the Board of Supervisors?
I think the advisory capacity issue was related to the review of proposals for special use permits and rezonings.
Right.
So is that something that the Board of Supervisors could grant the committee the advisory responsibility for?
Yes.
Thank you.
So I think circling back to Margaret's looking at all these other counties, let's all just focus on how we can improve what we're doing and continue to share thoughts and ideas in a positive light. And some of the goals are lofty, but they're goals. And let's all continue our efforts to help our county protect, restore our historic resources as much as we can. And, every little bit helps. And I think the more we dig into this with the other counties, the more helpful we can be and serve our county.
Well said.
So we're at close to 6 o'clock. Are there any other comments or additions that someone would like to add to new business, other business? All right, with your permission, Margaret, and can we I suggest we adjourn this meeting, and the next meeting will be, let's see, virtual, May 23rd, 2022. So May 23rd. Hope everybody can attend. Again, if you are saying you can join us, we're counting on that notice of attendance so we can identify a quorum. If we can't identify a quorum before the meeting, we need to know that. So let's all reply. And if for any reason your attendance commitment changes, please let us know and we can adapt accordingly.
Yeah, actually, Ross, why don't we say, if you think you're going to, at the last minute, if it looks like you're running late and you're going to be more than like 3 minutes late, why don't you shoot me or Chris an email so we know and we don't cancel the meeting at 4:35. You arrive at 4:36. So.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Great idea. Okay, well, everybody, we'll see you in the next meeting, and please save all your wonderful ideas for next meeting.
Ross, would you mind staying on for a minute?
Sure.
Thanks everyone for participating.